general, dashboards have two different main components. And these will both be accessed on the administration side. So I'm going to switch over to administration for this. And for a lot of you who have been with us for a while now, this will be kind of some review, but in a few minutes, I'm going to switch over and look at some of the new widget types that we've been working hard at developing over the last year. So I hope that that will be a bit of a new feature. Let's go and we'll click dashboards to start looking at dashboards. And from here in the administration, you can see that I have a list of all of the existing dashboards that have been created. This list here includes the name, a description, the category of the dashboard, and then an arrow button, which you can use to drag and drop that dashboard into the order that you wish. In general, dashboards, when they're created, any new dashboards created will go to the bottom of the list, whereas you can order that on your own then. At the top, we have some quick tiles to help sort out features. Clicking on them, you can see which ones will be published, unpublished, and which are labeled as privileged. And then if we click on an existing dashboard, we'll see kind of a summary of that dashboard, how it's currently set up. As I was saying, dashboards have two main components. One will be the structure of the page itself, which is kind of how we're looking at it now. We've got a dashboard with a name, description, and category. The layout is defined, how many columns across do we want to have? Will it reload automatically or on a timed interval, or not at all? One must reload it manually. And then who last made changes to it. The other component of dashboards are the widgets, which actually bring in the data to the dashboard. So from here, we have many different widgets. All of these have to do with sensor widget types, but what we see is the name of that dashboard, or I'm sorry, the name of that widget. In parentheses, this is the widget type. And then finally, in smaller letters underneath, this is the display type of that widget. Then from here, clicking on the middle button is the edit button. This will allow you to go in and change basically the metadata for that widget, the name, the description, the appearance, whereas this third button, this one all the way over on the right, will allow you to change the data of that widget, the way it's filtered, what it's collecting, that sort of a thing. And I didn't mention on the left side, this is another drag and drop, so you can choose which column across you want it to be in. Adding widgets is as simple as clicking the button, but before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to create a new dashboard as an example so we can work off of that. So back to dashboards, and then again, clicking on the green add button, and I can add a name. So for today's, this is going to be, what is this going to be? We'll do a weather summary. So then description, it's optional. Then I can apply a category to this dashboard. We've got a list of them that are pre-generated, or you can also go ahead and add your own category by clicking the button. I'm going to just leave this as a summary. Then we choose the layout. How do we want the columns to appear and be distributed? Let's do something like the 3-column layout. Do we want this to reload automatically or have to be refreshed manually? I'm going to do the refresh manually simply because I don't like that when it tries to reload in the background while I'm still looking at something. And then we do have options to publish or privilege this dashboard. Since this is an example, I do want this to be available for you guys to see what I've done after the webinar. So here we are, you can publish and privilege there. Save, and now we've got that first component set up. Let's add some widgets now. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I'd like to show you the different widget types that we have available. So I'm going to open a new tab so we can look at a few of these different types. We've gone through a lot of these before, so I'll try to skim over a lot of the ones that we've covered heavily in the past. But just in summary, one of the most common widget types that we use and see is the sensors widget type. And when we look at sensor widgets, these are the ones that bring in data into Contrail. So we can see these are tied to our different sensors at different sites throughout Contrail, different systems, and we've got many different appearance types for these. List to show, the data, where it came from, the timestamp. A line graph will show you data points over your designated amount of time. For rain sensors, especially rain increment, there's a hyetograph option, which will show you binned rainfall data across a period of your choice. Then we also have the tile type. I love the tile type. We've got a couple of fun options where we can color code what color the tile is based on the range of data that shows. For more context, you can do a cross-section type, and this is fun to, again, give more context to what that level, especially for things like stage or reservoir elevation sensors, you can insert your own profile so that you can see what that level is with respect to the local geography, topography, etc. Then we have a couple of indicator types, number of sensors that you can look at from this list, a fill gauge, different just gauges in general. So sensors really comprise the majority of the widgets that I see on dashboards, because sensor type widgets will be the best way for you to bring all of these data points from different sites, different sensors into one concise location. In addition to that, we do have a couple of widgets that are specifically dedicated to rain accumulation. These are the accumulation types. And again, we've got a tile type, a list type, and a hyetograph type. These are highly similar to what you've seen with the sensors, but these are just dedicated to rain accumulation. This tile type in particular is going to be, or the tile and the list really, you will also specify the way that you want to see things binned. So you can see that this has it specified in the last 15 minutes, and same goes for this one. So it will accumulate that rainfall over 15 minutes and show you that value instead of just what the most recent value for that sensor type is. Let's see, another one related to sensor data. This one is relatively new. We have a wind sensor type, and this one is cool because you can see it kind of on a dial or a compass, what the direction is for that wind. We also have a distribution of wind direction over a specific period of time. So you would give in the configuration of the sensor, you would give it the ID for the wind direction sensor and the site, and designate over which time period you want this distribution to be calculated. And then it will show you by hovering, what percentage were each direction distributed over. I'm sorry, that was a convoluted way of phrasing it. But you can see when I'm hovering over this that in the 0 to 22.5 degrees north increment, 127 reports were received over the last 30 days. So that is about 18.12% of all of the wind reports received came between 0 and 22.5 degrees north. Same goes over here. We look at 270 to 292.5 degrees north, 105 reports in the last 30 days. That makes up almost 15% came out of this increment here. And then as well, in summary, the latest data, that latest point was from 90 degrees north. We also have a windrows option here. This again, you would input information about the sensor the wind speed and the wind direction sensors into this wind rose widget. And with that, we can see the different distributions of what direction and what wind speed came through these different directions. I'm sorry, that didn't come out very well either. Wind rose widget will show you, again, the different directions that the wind speed came out of and the different percentages of what those wind speeds were over your user designated interval. All right, it looks like I've got a question asking if we are looking at the, all right, question from the audience. I have one, Raina, are you still planning to conduct the analysis at a glance webinar today at 10 a.m. Pacific? Yes, welcome, thanks for joining us. This is the analysis at a glance, creating custom dashboards and real-time widgets webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we looked through the wind, widget alarms. This is an existing widget type. Many of you have seen this one before, but it will give you a summary of existing alarms and what the state of those are. So if it's clear, not clear, if you need to acknowledge, list of cleared alarms. This is good for at a glance, you know, what is the current system of the alarms in my system, or what is the current state of the alarms in my system. The HTML widget is one that we've had for a while as well. This will allow you to, you can use it for plain text, adding notes to your dashboards. You can also use this for embedding third-party widgets that we may not have a widget type for. Some folks use it to even put pieces of bits of JavaScript in here as well, kind of add that functionality in. And you can see here we have also got a map bit embedded from Contrail with a button. Once I've stray away from this page, you'll see that these are actually elements that can be brought in from different aspects of Contrail, different widget types now as well. So dashboards, card images, these are new ones as well. So previously, you've seen that you have the ability to add different images to your dashboards. We now have card images, which can be, you know, used to express information or link to other resources while adding a little bit more visual interest to your dashboards. Here you can overlay text over the image. You'll see that a lot of this looks like some of your home pages as well, with the way that the text is overlaid over the image. You can, again, it's mostly, you know, it's not so much for adding the data, but it is adding more visual interest into your dashboards. If you want to brand things a little bit more to your agency or add images of that location, this is an interesting way that you can do that. If I go back, I think we also, the next one, we have a wide card image here as well. Again, looks more like adding a banner across the top of your dashboards. That's a cute pup. And we see, yep, again, more over, this is just ways to add visual interest to your dashboards, not so much for adding data. Another widget type that's new, adding different links to your dashboards. Previously, we had a widget specific to putting in, we had a specific widget type for your bookmarks, but not necessarily for just adding a list of links. So we do have different ways for doing that, adding color and different, really just different formats for adding those links in. And so hopefully when I go through my next when I go through my example, we can try to add in some of these new types as well so you can see what that looks like. We've got a button widget, similar to what we saw on that HTML page previously. You know, if you wanted to combine an embedded image, add a button or a drop down, that would have involved going into the HTML widget and writing out the code to do that all in one. Now you can do that with just by adding individual widget types that are pre-configured for you so that you can really just not have to write so much code and just choose from our widget types that already exist. So ton of different options, different colors, different formats, different ways you can outlay them. And this is kind of visually overwhelming here, but I think what we're really trying to do is just show all of the different options. Same goes for the drop-down option here. Again, looks a lot like the buttons that we just saw, but you can open them and expand them to see a list of items. This is something that a lot of you have seen on home pages already. That's been built into the HTML there. However, now we can add these to widgets as well, and then these can also be combined with buttons to serve more as a menu option from your dashboards. And yes, again, a lot of these new functions that I just showed, these are more for different options for visually differentiating your dashboards, not so much for displaying that data. However, now as I keep on going through our new ones, let's see different ways that we can bring in data from third-party widgets that we have in here. So one of the common questions that we get is about how to integrate Twitter in with Contrail. And the current best option that we have is that we can display different aspects from Twitter, although we don't have so much for sending data to Twitter. So here, these are different widget types that we can pull in information from Twitter if you want to embed your agency's Twitter profile or a recent timeline of tweets. You can do that. So we can show profile, different defined moments, likes made by a particular, tweets that are liked by a particular account, collections, lists, all sorts of different options with how we want to show data or show information from Twitter here. Same goes for, this was actually one that we used to put in as a piece of JavaScript, but we now have a full-on widget type associated with this, and this pulls in information about watches, warnings, and alerts from the National Weather Service for specific states, counties, or zones. And so these are cool because these are coming in directly from the National Weather Service, and you can see for the state of Colorado, we are currently under a couple of air quality alerts. We have a couple active freeze warnings, red flag warnings, great combination of things going on there. And so this is all pulled in from the National Weather Service directly. If we click on it, it will take me away from here and show the actual content of that page on the Weather Service. One thing to note about all of these different third-party widgets that I'm showing you is that we've done our best to integrate those in with Contrail. However, when the third party, you know, be it the National Weather Service, Twitter, Windy, when they make changes on their end, oftentimes they aren't going to notify us that they're making changes on their end. So third-party widgets do have a possibility of breaking without us noticing. And so if you notice any features that aren't really working the way they used to, please let us know and we'll go ahead, we'll take a look, see if there's anything that we can do. I know that previously we did lose some functionality with Twitter when they shut down some of their development, some of their developer options, and that closed down the API that they used to use. So that's kind of what happens with integrations from third party is we try our best to bring in some really cool things, but if they change it on their end, there's oftentimes not too much that we can do on our end. So we work with it when we can. But again, we want to bring in third party stuff because it allows us to really bring in some interesting features here. So Windy is another one of those really cool ones, and they have a lot of really awesome visualizations. I particularly like their wind maps that really help you to see what the wind patterns look like over an area. So here you can specify, this is one that has everything included. It has forecast, it has the map, it has all of the features, the whole shebang going on here. There's also one where you just see the map, does not have the spot forecast, basically. And we can see where that spot forecast is defined up here with this little pulsing dot. And also kind of a smaller version just embedded over here. So lots of, in the notes you can see options to change the different units, and everything in here are extensive, so I can't go into complete detail about all of the different options here, but I do definitely recommend that you dig in and experiment a little bit with dashboards on your own, and just to see all of the different features that are available in there, see what options you can do. All right, back to our list. Anything else? So we've got some in here. I guess the last ones that I want to cover are that we also have the ability right now to add in and embed different files and folders from Google Drive. We're also working on Microsoft OneDrive. That one's not currently available, but that is one that we're working on. And just a nice way that you can add in access. I know that our company uses Google and many others do as well. So if you want access to different files and one concise location for your staff, your general public users to be able to access informational documents, this would be available to, a tool available to do that. So I've talked a lot about the new widgets that we have, and a lot of them are more appearance-based. So let's go back over to some of the data and walk through the setup of a dashboard. So I have one that I started here. This was our weather summary dashboard, and let's go ahead and actually add in some weather data. So I am going to get started with some rainfall data, and for rainfall, I'm going to use an accumulation sensor. So let's do accumulation over the last, what's my timing that I want to do? We'll come back to that once I select my other options. Can I add a description? I'm going to leave this blank this time. If I were to input a URL, the URL would be to basically make the title into a link. So here, I guess I'll just do to show that feature. The target will be, how do you want that link to open? I like in a new window personally. Height, how big do we want this widget to be? I'm going to leave it as automatic. And then list tile hiatograph. Let's go tile for this one. So then next is the bin, or I'm sorry, this is the increment over the last how much time do we want to accumulate that rainfall. So I'm going to do 24-hour rainfall. So since I've defined it, it's 24-hour rainfall. I'm going to change my title just a little bit to reflect that as well. So as I had mentioned, tile widgets are cool because you can define different colors for different ranges of data. This is something that's been used heavily by some of our clients who use dashboards effectively to display different rainfall intensities over time. I can show you an example of that in action real fast. Let's see, I'm on our company website right now. This is onerain.com, and then I've gone to company and our customers, and we have a list of some public facing real life examples that you can take a look at if you would like to see what some of those options might look like. So as I was describing, some of our clients have really heavily used the tile widgets and color coding of those to change and make a rainfall intensity table off of dashboards effectively. This one comes from Sacramento County in California, and they've made, these are all different accumulation tile widgets, and they change color based on how much rainfall has been accumulated in the last 3 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, and those colors correspond with different frequency ranges, different time periods. And so currently no rainfall, that all corresponds with the 0 to 2 year event. But as you can see, these are going to change color when different increments of rainfall have been received. So I'm not going to get into all of that and set all of that up with this widget, but what you could do then would be to define, well, from 0 to 1.5 inches corresponds with what color? Do we want that to be like a light gray? Okay, great. So I'll leave it at that. And then, you know, for another range, you would click the plus button and add, okay, from 1.5 to 2 inches is going to be a different color. Next. So that is more of what I call the metadata page for the widget. We kind of define how we want it to look, how we want it to be called, all of that. This is the data page for everything. This is where we add the different data. What do we want to actually pull in with this widget? So first we define if we're going to pull from a view or a system. I'm going to just pull from the all sites view. You can select a sensor type if you want to filter only by a sensor type. I like doing this, especially for accumulation, because really accumulation will work best with a rain increment widget. There. Then filter here. This is how we can decide, well, is there a specific range of sensors we want to look at, or a specific range of sites? Is there only one in particular that we want to look at? So here, I'm going to open up one new tab to see my options for sensors, filtering out by rain increment, as I have been doing before. And it looks like we've got a decent selection, so I am just going to actually leave this wide open and not filter out by specific sites, sensors, but showing you the options we can do by sensor name, site ID, sensor ID, different types, what the reading is when it was reported, or if that is out of service. Then again, different qualifiers. Does this contain this text? Is it greater than this value? Is it before this date? That kind of a thing. And then we can also limit by a specific number of sensors, how we want it to be ordered. This is going to be by sensor name. Let's do site name instead. And direction, is that ascending, so A to Z, or descending Z to A? Great. So now you can see I've got one widget. If I want to preview that, we can open in a new window right here. And here is my dashboard. All of the tiles are currently the brownish gray because I had defined that 0 to 1.5 inches would be a brownish gray color. If I decided, you know what, that's not the right color, let's go back to that dashboard, edit the data, and I'm going to just remove those ranges because those aren't the right colors. Let's come back to that another time. Now I can go here, refresh, and it will default to the color associated with the tile of that sensor type by default. So we have some rainfall information here. Let's add in, let's close a few pages. Let's add in a embedded version of the map. You know, let's give us some visual context for where are these sensors actually located. So widget type, if you're going to embed anything, I recommend using the inline frame option, and I'm going to call this a map, but this time I don't want that title to show, so I'm going to uncheck yes next to name. I want this to be large because we're going to be right in the middle of everything, and now let's click next. All right, so because we're going to be embedding an element into this page, we need to find the URL of that element. And when you do an inline frame, that can be of content within Contrail, or that can be content outside of Contrail. If it's outside of Contrail, then you do need to make sure that it is secure and accessible. And what I mean by that is that it uses HTTPS, not just HTTP. If it uses HTTP, you will need to run that through the proxy and make sure that this button is turned to yes, just so that everything maintains the security of the pages. Linking to unsecure, insecure content is a way that will basically break the security of the page. So we want to avoid that wherever possible. So for this one, we're going to link to content internal to Contrail. So I'm going to go ahead and open a page with the map on it just to figure out what the URL that I need is. So I'm on the map now. Let's go ahead. I'm going to filter out by sensor type, kind of match what I have existing there already with rain increment. We'll pull in the last report over those sites. Looks great. Actually, yep, let's leave rain increment. And I'm also zooming in a little bit on those sites in particular. So I could go ahead and grab the URL from the top here, but you can see that none of the content up here really has any limiters on what's being shown on the page. The URL on the page of the map does not automatically update to contain the information captured here. So instead, what I'm going to do is go back to views on the map, and then under share, there's a link option. And I want to grab that link instead, because that contains the information about how far I'm zoomed in on this map, the coordinates around which I'm centered, the rain increment, what sensor type I'm looking at. So we want, again, the link here, copy, and let's go back to that add page and paste it there. Now, you'll see there's a lot of stuff in there. I'm going to mostly leave that there, but within Contrail, if you're linking to internal content, we can use a relative link, not a specific link, and take out the domain information. This is particularly useful to our clients who have multiple servers and sometimes might access via an IP address rather than a nice looking domain name. If you have the domain in there, then it will only work when you access it from that domain. So for example, I had in there that it was demonstration.onerain.com, and that would only work if I had access to this from demonstration.onerain.com. But since this is one of our servers, we also have an IP address that's associated with this. That would also show this page. And if we came to this from that IP address, this link or this piece that we're embedding in there wouldn't have shown, and it would just show that there's an error and that it can't access this content instead. So for those Contrail internal content pieces that you're embedding, make sure that you take out that domain name. Another fun thing that I like to do with especially map pieces, but anything embedded from Contrail, is I add the ampersand embed equals true. And what that does is when it's embedded, it will remove the navigation panel from up here and the logo and everything from the piece that you're embedding on that page. So it looks like it's a clean insert of that map. I'll show you what I mean. Let's click save, refresh my page, and now we can see that, oh, well, it's a little off center. So I'm going to adjust that, show exactly the view that I want. And let's grab that new link there for updated information. Great, so we're good. Again. Let's go back and fix that URL fast. Again, I want to take out demonstration.onerain.com, and I'm going to add at the end ampersand embed equals true. Save. And now when I refresh, it should stay right over those 4 sites. Excellent. So what else can we add to this page? Well, why don't we go ahead and add some stage data from sensors. So I'm going to add that underneath the map. And let's see, we can leave it at the sensors widget type. And let's add in 48-hour stage. And I want that title to show, so I'm leaving name checked to yes. Height, automatic, panel type. Let's do the line graph this time. So as I said, I wanted to do 48 hours, so I'm going to switch that to 2 days instead. Great, so we've got the metadata set for this particular widget, the name, how we want it to look. Let's click Save, or Next rather, and select the data. So I'm gonna keep it on that All Sites view just to keep it consistent with what we're looking at. Sensor type, let's filter out to just stage data. And I'm not going to add any filters for my sensor for now, just to see what shows up when I save it. So let's go ahead. Still, I want to order by site, ascending, site name, that is, and save. Let's refresh the page and see what shows up for us. So now we've got quite a few stage sensors in that view actually. So I'm going to go back and limit that just a little bit more, just so that we kind of match what exists already there. So we've got, in general, a line graph showing data over the last 48 hours. If there are thresholds that have been defined, those will also show on the graph as well. This one is indicating that there are no readings that match criteria, so this particular sensor must be timed out over the last 2 days, so it's not able to return any data. With that, let's see. So I am going to split this window into two, actually, so I can kind of have that comparison. And let's take a look now at filtering out this list of stage sensors a little bit more, because it shows many more than what I actually want. So I'm going to have this to match any of the criteria here, and I'm going to do a filter by sensor, by site name, excuse me. So we'll do site, and site refers to site name, and I want the site name to contain, and I want this, what I'm going to do is match this to the existing sites shown in my rainfall. So I want any sites that contain the word or the phrase alligator creek. And I'm going to add another one. And any sites that contain the words Blackwater Creek. How about anything that adds or has the site name Little Manatee? And then finally, let's do anything with the site name Pinebrook. So you'll see that I'm making sure that my match is for any of these criteria. If it were set to all of these criteria, it would be looking for sites that contain the words Alligator Creek, Blackwater Creek, Little Manatee, and Pinebrook all in the same site name. So since we want to show all of these sites, we want this to match any. Click Save. And now I'm going to recombine my pages just so that we have everything again, and refresh. And let's take a look at that. Oh, that's much better. Nice, short, filtered list. Excellent. So I've got one empty column here. Let's add one more feature. Let's go to Widgets. And I'm going to embed an image from a different location. So here we go, is an image. I could do the iframe if I wanted, but if I know that I'm going to be embedding an image in particular, I like to use the image widget type instead. So let's see, we've got the name. I am going to pull in information about the National Weather Service weather story. I can show the name, display height. We'll leave that to automatic and click next. So where am I going to pull this image from? Well, let's go out and find an image to pull. Let's go to weather.gov, and all of my data is in Florida, so let's look in that particular area of Florida. And on this front page, it's wonderful. They already have their own weather story. I would love to include this information on a dashboard. So I can confirm, first off, by double clicking up in the URL, that this is HTTPS. I will not have to route this through the proxy. I just need to make sure that the link to this image is a static link, even if the image changes. So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this image in particular. I'm going to right click on it, and then in my menu that pops up, I have Open Image in a new tab, and click on it. So up in this URL, a couple different things that we see here. Some of this is going to stay the same, but at the end of it, after this question mark, you can see that there's some numbers, some letters, and that probably refers to this image in particular. However, tomorrow they're going to upload a new image and it will still have this URL and this name. So since it doesn't have any date, time information to tie it to a specific image, I feel comfortable using this to embed. So I am going to grab just that information there, copy it, and let's go back to my tab where I'm adding the new widget and paste it. Again, it's using HTTPS, so I do not need to have the proxy enabled. Okay, so we'll close those because I'm done with those, and let's refresh my page. And now you can see that that image is pulled into Contrail so that I can see it here as well. If I click on it, it makes it a little bit bigger so that I can see it a little bit better than I did before. And tomorrow when they update their weather story with a new image, that should also show in here as well. All right, what other fun things can we add in here? Add another widget because I've got space on that dashboard and it needs filling. Let's see, what are other fun ones? Let's do wind because we haven't really walked through wind too much and I wasn't great with my explanation there before. So I'm going to do a wind rows widget because I want to take a look at this more complicated option. So we'll do wind rows. The panel type, let's set that specifically to wind rows. And then we can set the interval. So let's go over 2 days just so that we have a span of data available. We do have the ability to set what is the maximum wind speed available. I'm going to leave that at the default. So let's just click next. So now you can see here it's asking for 2 different keys. One is the wind speed key and one is the wind direction key. And I want to show you where we get that information. So I'm going to click on sensors, open that up and find the sensor that I want to use. So, or the site from which these sensors are going to come from. So let's start with wind speed or wind velocity. And it looks like we really actually only have one location, one site within this view that has wind data. So that makes my life a little bit easier in choosing. So let's go to that wind speed sensor and click on it. And then the key is shown right here. It's a UUID. And if I click on the copy button next to it, it will copy that information for me. So now we go back to the dashboard and paste that in the field here. And we'll do the same thing for wind direction. So sensor, at the same site, let's grab wind direction, copy that key, and paste it in for the widget. So then we click save, and that's how we get the data in for the wind options. We need to grab the keys rather than use that filter. So if I close this page and refresh my dashboard now, we can see that we have pulled in the data for the last couple of days. Now, I've got a question that came in. It says, is it possible to make an embedded image from an outside website bigger? The answer to that is yes. Currently, this is small because of the size that because of the size of the column that I put it in. If I move this over to this center column, it will change its size to fit to the parameters of this column here, and I'll demonstrate that real fast. So, yep, there's my nice, lovely wind rows over the last 2 days, and we see because it fits in this, we get cut off a little bit, but I can page through and see the different colors and distributions for the wind speed down at the bottom here. So back to resizing images, I'm going to go back to my dashboard, and let's move this weather story image into the center column so that we can see that in a larger position. If I want, I can drag and drop this into the center column. I'm going to refresh just to make sure it actually went over there. It didn't. And some of you have commented to me previously that dragging and dropping can be a little finicky. I know, it's a pain sometimes. So one of the things that we can do instead of dragging and dropping is go to the edit. And we now have an option to indicate which column you want it to be in. So I'm going to move it to column number 2 instead of 3. and save. So now we see, okay, that weather story is in there. Let's refresh. It's not up there anymore, but you can see here it is in the center and it is much bigger than we saw previously. So yes, it is possible to bring that in and make it bigger. It just depends on the size of the widget that you've selected, as well as the size of the column that you've decided to put that widget in. I hope that that answers your question. So I've gone through a couple of different options, as well as shown our new widget types over about the last year. A lot of those are focused on different ways that you can really visually distinguish your dashboards and brand those, so that you can make these even more interesting, really visually stunning options. I didn't go through the setup of all of those, but I really do encourage you to take some time and experiment with that a little bit on your own end. See what cool features we have. And again, if you want to see some of those awesome examples that our existing customers have done, you can go to onerain.com and company down to customers, and that will load this list where you can see some of our existing clients. They're rock stars, and they have examples for exploring different dashboards that you can see some of the really cool things these folks have come up with, so you can gain inspiration and see exactly what you might want to implement in your own instances of Contrail. So that wraps up what I've got for today. I do want to plug our next webinar is going to be part 2 of dashboards, and we'll go through a little bit more of the visualization of data and how you can use dashboards to accomplish that. Show more examples, walk through, again, more setup, kind of some of the instructions on how to achieve some of these really cool options. So join us next month. That's going to be November, oh goodness, I lost my screen with the date on it. Let's find out when that's going to be, right? So if you haven't before, you can sign up on our upcoming live webinars page, and that information is again at our onerain.com support upcoming live webinars. And so next month, again, making decisions easier with effective data visualization. It's basically our dashboards part 2. And that will be on Thursday, November 19th at 10 Pacific, 11 Mountain, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Same time, same place. So register for that for part 2. I'll open up for questions, and until then, take care.